Welcome to All Worn Out. I'm your host, Warren Meredith. On the show today, Steve Creep of Steve Creep and the Wild Cards. They're a rock band out of Montreal, and they keep themselves very busy. Oh, and did I mention Steve's brother used to be Carey Price's roommate? Hi, everybody. Welcome to All Worn Out. It's a podcast about music. It's a podcast about what you're passionate about, and it's a podcast about what our guest is passionate about. Today, I am very pleased and excited to be joined by the one and only Steve Creep of Steve Creep and the Wild Cards. Steve, you guys are based out of Montreal, correct?
Yeah, most of us. Our drummer Will is in Ontario, like right by the border around Montebello, Hawkesbury area.
Yes, your drummer Will, who I met years ago through our mutual friend, Mr. Cannon Paglam.
Yeah.
Um, Cannon booked us for his birthday along with Rude Mood back for his 50th, and I got to meet with Will. And gosh, is he an impressive drummer?
Yeah,
Um,
yeah.
yeah,
Very
man,
diverse. Very diverse.
so good. And at the time, I don't know if he's still doing it, but he was doing that stuff where he was drumming with seniors groups, and
Yeah, I think he is. Yeah,
I found that very cool as well. And yeah, just a stand up guy. And as soon as I heard he was your drummer, I was like, I need to talk to Steve. Like, even
yeah.
though like we've got a couple mutual friends who we're gonna talk to, but like you and I, we've never chatted before or anything like that.
You're in
Um,
Ottawa.
yeah, I am. I'm based in Ottawa, but born in Ottawa, but raised in the country, about an hour outside of town. Uh, so you are the vocal artist, but you recorded everything on the album, correct?
Yeah, yeah. The band was put together quite some time after the songs were already completed.
Tell me a little bit about that. I mean, it says here that one of your musical heroes is Prince. So
Yeah,
was it always your goal to do this, like to be able to do that? Because that's not easy. I can't come anywhere near doing something like that.
I don't know. I never, I didn't set out to be like a solo guy or intend on recording. I always wanted to do something where I would record all the instruments, but I mean, I grew up more before there was Dave Grohl. Prince was the guy that everyone knew recorded all his own instruments, and that was my earliest influence as far as multi-instrument. Because when you grow up, like in my era, I'm a little older, so there there wasn't many multi instrumentalists that were exposed that people knew about. So
Mhm.
either you were a guitar player or a bass player. Whenever you saw, I remember seeing Keith Richards playing bass at the Rolling Stones Rock and Roll Circus. He was playing in another band. I always thought that was so weird, but nowadays it's more and more common. You see these kids on YouTube; they can play anything. But yeah, I guess I wanted to play guitar initially, and I just didn't have the discipline, and we didn't have the internet back then. This is back in the old ages of pre-technology. So I found drums, and I just adapted to it a lot faster, and that became my first instrument that I really loved. But I loved when I was listening to rock music and pop. I would always cue in on everything everybody was doing. Like I would just listen to the mix and I'd be like, "Oh, that's really interesting." And then I got into bass playing. I loved Geezer Butler and John Paul Jones and guys like that. And you really see how each guy, the importance of each instrument and each member, what they contribute to the final product, right? So
I think
as a result, I just got really passionate about music in general.
heck yes. Like to touch on like the Geezer Butler thing. I mean, like, yeah, there's a lot of unsung heroes like him who, wrote so many incredible lyrics that we all love to shout out. And yet,
Yeah.
he's kind of just there in the background quietly,
Some of the
being
most dangerous secret weapons are the guys in the back. John Paul Jones was the quietest Led Zeppelin member, and once again, the most lethal with the keys and an incredible bass play. When you take him out and you put like a Dee Dee Ramone or whatever, like a Johnny One Note guy, you really see the difference in the contribution. So
Oh yeah, I find bass players are just they're so important and so cool. I even like to always bring up John Deacon, in
yeah,
Queen, like
another
very
very unsung hero. Yeah,
underrated, or like I'm trying to think of his name right now, but like the bassist from Free, who does the crazy bass
Oh,
solo back in the 70s. And I
yeah, yeah.
mean, there's
Those
some.
70s bass players, there's a lot of them that Dennis Dunaway and John Entwistle. I mean, there's so many greats out there, but yeah, bass is awfully overlooked because it's like a boring instrument that's not flashy, right? But if you're Billy Sheehan, you can make it flashy.
So, were you born in Montreal?
Just the South Shore, kind of like you, like just out of town.
Okay. And so you grew up there just outside Montreal?
Yeah, yeah. Me and Scott, the bass player.
You and Scott, the bass player. You guys are best friends kind of
Actually,
growing up?
Phil, our guitar player, is actually from the same neighborhood as we are, but he's younger. We didn't really know him until the last couple of years. So.
Okay, that's very sweet. And then you went to McDonald Cartier High School.
Yeah.
What were your high school years like? What music were you into then?
Well, this was the '80s, so I was, I would say Hysteria from Def Leppard was about the biggest thing at the time. I remember, all the hair metal like Whitesnake, and I myself was really into Kiss and Led Zeppelin, Van Halen, things like, obviously, right? But I liked all kinds of music because prior to high school, I was more into the pop stuff. I got, I was buying 45s by like Cyndi Lauper and Prince and Sting, Michael Jackson, all the artists were great. Culture Club was big, Duran Duran. And then Duran Duran was kind of like an interesting middle ground because there was a guitarist, Andy Taylor was adding stuff in there that was a little more edgy than the average pop songs. And then when you listen to Beat It with the Michael Jackson, with Eddie Van Halen solo on it, and then Steve Lukather was doing the rhythm guitars in that, and it's pretty rock and roll. Like when you really strip it down. But
Yes, it definitely is.
that's the marriage.
Yeah, that's so cool. So in high school, were you playing all these instruments? Were you playing the drums in high school?
No, I was an artist in high school. I want to be. I guess I don't know if I want to be an artist, but I was just naturally good at it. And then around 15 years old, I got my first drum kit, and I always hung around like musicians. To me, it was like some sorcery, ancient Chinese secret stuff where you're like, how does he do that? And
Yep.
because it takes a long time for back then to learn things when you don't have YouTube at your disposal. You got to have a mentor, and you got to get out and watch what people do in bars. And being too young to be in bars, that wasn't really an option. So. Yeah, it's just trying to find the musicians that inspired me around the school. I try to hang out with the best guys and learn what the hell they were doing.
So
But
were
I
you?
was slow. I was a slow learner. Like guitar took a long, long time for me.
I I still haven't figured it out. So
Are,
kudos
are
to you.
you a guitarist or in your band
I
or?
I'm a vocalist, but in the early days, I used to do everything like writing the music for myself, and singing it. And then in my first band, I played rhythm and sang, but then I just sort of wanted to stick to belting. I found that playing guitar kind of got in the way sometimes of what I was trying to
Oh yeah.
do. So, but I have so much appreciation for vocalists who can play guitar. Like that's the thing I'm
I
always looking at.
I have a deep appreciation for singers that don't play guitar on stage. It's great that if they know how to play it, but there's an art form to entertaining and being a front man, as it were. Like when you see, Billy Joe Armstrong is a great example because he's known as a guitar playing front man, but when he takes that guitar off and he's got the other guy playing all his parts, he's an insane front man, and he's one of the most entertaining I've seen. But then you see guys like who grew up with not really playing guitar. I mean, Freddie Mercury, he played in crazy little thing called Love, but that's pretty much it. And to see what he did with half a mic stand, he doesn't even have the full mic stand. He's just carrying that kind of half thing around, and the charisma and the confidence that he exuberated is just unbelievable. Steven Tyler, all those great frontmen. I wish I had. I never really did much of that in a band. I always played guitar and sang. It was, utilizing everything that you can to make the band smaller and more economical. But I love watching frontmen.
I never did the music thing in high school. I fiddled around with guitars. It wasn't until, get this, and you're going to have to corroborate this for me or disperse this idea that I have. But when I was 21 ish, so many moons ago, I kind of sang for my first time and recognized that I could kind of sing. And this was at a rock star karaoke at Algonquin College at the observatory. And the band on stage, according to them, they were Moist. Now,
Oh,
minus David Usher. This is what they
oh,
told me after I finished singing. So I can't confirm or deny this,
you
but
might work for them, right?
that's what I am saying. Isn't this an
Yeah,
interesting
yeah.
thing? So the first time I ever got up on stage, so I was trying to compete with this other ginger at the table, and he had just sang something great. I can't remember what it was, maybe some Ramones or something. And he came back, and I was like, I got to go up there now. That's it, And the whiskey talking, and so I picked out "Don't Stop Believing," and so
Oh, pretty
they
ambitious.
yeah, so that's what they told me. When I went up on stage, they kind of took me aside and they were like, "This might not go so well, so
Right.
just stay with us, okay? Stay with us." And so at the end, I did a pretty good job and they looked at me again and they said, "Wow, buddy, nice work, like kudos." And I walked back and I went, "What the hell? I think I did okay." And I mean, it would be years gone by before I would be in my first band still, a couple of years. Um, but that was my entrance in, and when I saw that you were a backline technician for Moist, I was like, oh, that's so cool. Maybe you could tell me if they ever did that back in the day. But I know that lots of Canadian bands have side gigs. You have to.
Yeah.
um it's
Well, I
like,
know Jeff Pierce, the bass player. He does an assortment of gigs. He's kind of like me. He'll be in a wedding band and he'll play originals. God only knows his full thing. We never really got too deep into it. I worked for them for 5 shows, so I was kind of limited with my personal time with each member. I spent most of my time was really working for Mark McAway and the keyboard player Kevin. So uh,
cool.
the drums I had to set up everything, but the guys that needed most of the attention were the keyboards were a very technical part of their show because all his sounds that he uses they're not just on the keys. He has like a laptop that has all the album's pre-programmed sounds, and I have to have his key and the password, and he's got a backup setup in case the main one goes down. So there's a lot of focus on him. Setting up a drum kit is setting up a drum kit, and
Well, you
Francis
make it
doesn't.
sound easy.
Well, I've been doing it for a long time, so maybe it's easy now. But yeah, when you're first getting into that sort of thing, it's a little nerve wracking if you don't know much about keys, because I still don't.
Well,
But
it's just that I'm a diva singer, right? So I'm always in awe. So I see my drummer come in, and I'm always saying to my drummer every time, I'm like, I can't believe you do this every time, dragging this heavy bag in and out. And I'll
yeah,
joke, like I'll joke with them, like, how about we invest in those like aluminum stand things that are really sturdy? Because one time
yeah,
I saw a girl drummer bring those in. I think she was drumming for the Planet Smashers, and I was like, that's so cool because carrying in her gear was so easy, and setting it up, it was like, ah.
yeah. I play with a few drummers like in the pubs. I don't know. I don't know if those little aluminum stands would withstand someone like Tommy Lee or Dave Grohl, but yeah, in like a wedding band or like a pub cover band, you're not whacking the crap out of them, so they might survive those hits. But man, do I ever envy when I see a guy walk in with a bag. I've played with a few drummers where they come in. It looks like a stick bag, and it's their whole hardware kit.
Oh man.
Meanwhile,
Oh
we call it the bag of death in our band. It's just
yeah,
strange.
exactly. They're like, I don't want to carry that. Hand me anything else. Give me the snare. Give me whatever else. But I don't want
Well,
that.
when you're a kid and you see a drummer, on stage, you're like, oh man, I want to be a drummer. And you're not thinking about loading
No,
that gear in when and
you know.
same with in the early days of rock and roll where everybody had massive Marshall stacks and SVT bass amps. You're like, I want the biggest amps on stage, and yeah, it looks awesome, but you're not thinking about the loading.
So you're
And those
also
rock stars aren't loading it; it's the other guys, right? So,
yes, exactly. But I mean, gosh, I've never been. Well, I've had some cool shows where I had cool people come and help us, but it's never been the rock star thing. Um, Tell me about being a guitar technician at Tesla.
yeah, that gig. I got that gig through Mitch LaFon, who's a rock journalist, podcaster. and he's from the west end of Montreal, just off the island, and he knows all the hair guys, from the '80s. He's from that era, and he was a fan of it. And he just I don't know how he transitioned into getting that job or how he created his brand or whatever, but he slowly built up his connections. And I guess when you get one, you get more and more and more. And so he was very well connected with these guys, kind of like a Canadian Eddie Trunk, if you will.
Mm. Yeah, absolutely.
And so he saw that I was drumming in a band called Playhouse, which was like a hard rock Motley Crue-ish kind of band. And we were always opening up for the bands that he was writing for, like Helix and Killer Dwarfs and things like that, LA Guns, Dead Daisies. So when he we started talking at the shows and we became friends. And one day he I guess he has me on Instagram and Facebook and all that, and he sees all the other things that I do. So he knew that I'd already worked for Skinner and Foreigner as like a backline guy, and that was more like stagehand backline. Like I was kind of like a middle guy. Like normally when you have stagehands, they just lug the gear around and that's the end of it. The the tech guys are all the guys that set up the drums, like piece by piece. The schleps are the guys who just bring the kit to this location. So I was kind of like the middle guy. I would not only just lug it, but I was kind of in charge of the team. And if they needed help, I would help set up the drum kit for Skinner. And then in other cases, I was like with Beach Boys, I was actually serving them their rider in their bus and backstage. I had to supply them with their cooler and stuff like that. So I guess he saw that I did things like that, and he knew that I had a knowledge of the industry and that I've toured and everything like that. So he's like, he's got to be worth something if he's done all that. And he goes, "Have you ever tech before?" I'm like, "Well, not full on tech. No." I said, "Watched it. I've been around it, but I never aspired to do that." And I go, "I'm probably not the right guy to fix an amp if it burns out on stage. I can fix guitars if they fall off a rack. I can fix the wood, but when it comes to wiring and things like that, it's not really my thing." He goes, "Well, look, it's one tour with Tesla. They're opening it for Def Leppard. Uh, you're pretty much the odds of you running into something severe are pretty low. And in a band like that, they've got backup gear already on stage with them. So
Okay.
you're probably going to be able to survive the tour." So most of the tour was pretty easy. Like there was a few instances where I found the action on Frank's guitar was a little low. He was getting a buzz on the G. We had to go to the Chicago Music Exchange while we were in the States doing the headlining shows to kind of have that looked at because I didn't have the tools. I was basically just set to babysit Frank's rig, make sure that his guitars are in tune, they're clean, and everything's all as should be, and he doesn't have to think about it. But I wasn't really like if I want to be a full time like professional long term tech, I would need more tools and I would need to get more serious about it. But it's not a very glamorous job. You're the first guy in and you're the last guy out. The days are very long and you're not adored. You're not. It's not you performing on that stage. You're watching this guy, and you're
Yeah.
just like, man, I wish I was that guy, kind of thing. But it's still fun hanging
Still,
around. You meet a lot of cool people, and it's really a different side of the industry that's intriguing for sure.
some of my favorite experiences are, some of the bigger shows I've opened for, and being able to stand at the side and watching them do their thing. And I'm sure that at least for the first half of the tour, that's probably what you were loving to do, like you,
Well,
and
there was the third show. We were in Quebec, they have a song called "Modern Day Cowboy," and it's the third song in the set list, and it requires an acoustic guitar, and it goes on this stand, and he kind of leans over his electric, and he plays a verse part with it. He goes, "It's not detrimental, but it's in the song, so I like to have the acoustic on stage." So I guess that was the third song that night, and I was still new, and I was still like, you're trying to absorb everything that's going on because you have a lot more than just that to pay attention to. If his wireless pack falls out of his pocket, like you got to watch out. Sometimes, and he uses a wire; he doesn't use wireless.
hmm,
So he's walking up to the ego ramp down the middle of the stage, and if his wire gets caught, I got to run up and kind of unsnag it so it doesn't unplug. And so I guess I wasn't paying attention that day. And at the end of the show, he goes, "What happened during Modern Day Cowboy?" And I completely didn't even think about it. Well, I went back to the front, and my acoustic wasn't there. I'm like, "Dude, I was so raptured in watching you that I didn't even think about. I'm really, really sorry. He was laughing at us, dude. It's not a big deal. As long as you got it for Love Song and Signs, it's okay. So, but he was laughing about it. But
Yeah.
talking about seeing funny things, there was at the Montreal show. He goes backstage and in between songs, and I'm like, I'm already 4 shows in now, so I know the rhythm, and I'm like, I don't need to give him a guitar. He's not supposed to have a guitar at this point in the show. And he runs behind the LED screen for like a minute, and then he comes back, and I'm like, at the end of the show, I'm like, why did you disappear like that? Like I thought you needed an emergency change, and you waved me off. He goes, I realized after the second song my zipper was down. I didn't want to put it up with all the lights on me, so I ran backstage to do it. So.
Pro maneuver. Very,
Yeah, yeah.
very
He plays
nice.
his guitar a little high. If he played a little lower, he wouldn't have to worry about that.
Well, it's wild to me because I had my friend on from North Carolina who does a podcast about music and whatnot. And he's a big music fan who found my band. And so I brought him on and we talked about Tesla and like his love of Tesla, being an American. We'll talk about bands that have impacted him from up this way. And they're definitely one of them. Pretty exciting that you get to
They
work
don't
with.
fit in with the hair bands because they were never really one of those big haired lipstick wearing, glam rock bands. But they were from the same era, so everybody just labeled them because they had the long hair and the songs were hard rock. But they're kind of like you know, I noticed when we were on tour in the States, they weren't playing like Chicago and New York. They were playing like Idaho and you know towns like Huber Heights, places I've never even heard of. And I go, why are you booked in these strange towns? He goes, maybe in the '80s at our peak we would be considered like a commercial act. But he goes, nowadays our fan base, we're like a blue collar rock band, and by that we do really well in the small towns. They play New York. They actually played smaller rooms because I guess the bigger the city, the more modern artists get a bulk of the attention, and bands like that become a nostalgic act, and they're less cool to larger hit cities. But when you go to those small towns, they're still really adored, and they can. And there's a lot of them in the states. The population is 10 to 1, so they can maintain a whole career without ever even leaving the country.
Absolutely. That's so cool.
They're playing to thousands every night. Like
I
if they
mean,
play New York, it's about 1,000 seats. But if they play anywhere else, we did one show in Idaho that was like 10,000 people. It was unbelievable. I didn't know that they could still do that. The other shows were on average 3 to 4,000 people. That's still pretty awesome for a band that hasn't really had a hit since 1992.
yeah.
So not bad.
Well, let me ask you about you said you wanted that maybe you didn't want to, but you were just naturally good at it, that you were an artist or going to be an artist. And it says on your Facebook you work with charcoal and acrylic paint.
Yeah.
Um, I'm kind of jealous of that because like my dad's a painter. He does like the whole acrylic paint thing, but like I never got any of that drawing artist ability whatsoever.
Well, I
My
didn't get that
you know,
gene.
no, I'm horrible at drawing. Like I got my mom's musical side, but when it comes to that artistry with the hands, I don't
You would
have it.
think, like I can't. Everybody's obviously individual, but you would think that the music side would almost go hand in hand with the art, but it's not always necessarily true. Because I know a lot of great musicians that can draw, and vice versa. But for me, my father's side has no music or art in it at all. Like I don't even know what. I guess maybe athleticism would be on my father's side, but my mother's side is all. It's all art. My mother was an artist. My grandfather was an artist. Played a little trumpet, but there wasn't much music in my family overall. So I didn't get the music. I don't think naturally from my family.
Cool. I saw as well on your Facebook page. I think it's of note to everybody right now. The whole country was stunned by the events in Jasper.
Yeah,
And I saw that you got to play there. You played at the Whistle Stop Pub,
yeah.
and yeah, a few times.
One of our
Maybe,
favorite places to be. Actually, I loved it.
yeah, like it's a great place to be. I'm guessing I've never been.
It's the town's like 3,700 people. It's really small. You can walk the perimeter in under an hour easily, like maybe a half an hour to be honest with you. But it's worth the walk. I didn't want to stray outside of the perimeter because we knew there was bears. We'd witnessed bears in the streets, so we're like, yeah, I don't want to go anywhere where I can't run away. You know? But with that being said, it's still one of the most beautiful places. I've been in Canmore and Banff and all that, and it's got the same kind of charm and touristy vibe in the very central street where it's all wood. If you've ever been out west to Banff and places like that, and you're surrounded by mountains and beautiful water and everything about it is just gorgeous. And it's right by like a railway, so there's like this old vintage train that stopped. I think that one of the photos that I posted is in there.
Yeah.
But the bar itself is like it's just like a little pub. You play on the floor, and they drag down the PA for you out of this back room, and you have to assemble it to play. It's literally like playing, any bar in like the Heart and Crown. What Heart and Crown even has a stage, so yeah, it's even you're just on the carpet with the people, and there's not really any lights on you. It's just whatever lights are in the room. So, but the charm and the people, like it was one of the funnest party rooms that we were in. We always had a great. I think because it's a small town, everybody just wants to have a good time, and there's not really any egos there. So, I personally really enjoyed it, and the accommodations were great. They put us in a hotel upstairs. We all had our own rooms. I'm telling you, I love playing there. Our fiddler, who plays in Red Fox, her name is Daphne. She went into a hot tub on the roof. Just walking through that town, man. I got this cool shirt. It's like the first Star Wars poster, but it says Star Trek on it. That's like to taunt the fans. So I was really excited to get that when I bought that.
So, like many moons ago, I went by. I had the Ginger Fox band, and it was a couple years after it was done, or maybe 3 years after. I saw Red Fox, and I was like, okay, yeah, good. Someone's gonna get some good use out of this idea because it's a darn good idea, I thought. And
Yeah.
back in the day, also, my friend sent me this picture, and it was like a local brewery that had used my face for like some kind of ginger beer, but like
Okay.
they didn't ask me
They
or
didn't ask you,
nothing.
really?
No, no, and but it was me. Like it was me. At least I was like, wow,
Did you
okay.
ever call them and like make them shake a little bit, or
No, I just thought it was kind of hilarious because they were local, and I was like, all right, I guess they just thought it was like an idea, like a
it's
Ginger Fox
flattering?
type of beer. Yeah, exactly. Like maybe if they were like Budweiser, I would have gone after them or
Yeah,
something.
you could have made money. No
Yeah, and
point.
then it was exactly. And then another connection that we have is through Chris Gaines, who
Yeah.
who just called me. Okay, I just got off the phone with him a few minutes ago because he was calling to give me encouragement, but of course he was also giving me some constructive criticism, and that's what I love about Chris Gaines is I can always count on his honesty and him to shoot straight with me, tell me exactly what he's thinking. So, um, we had, and he was giving me trouble about saying too much. So there we go, Chris. I'm throwing a couple.
Everybody has their weird little habits.
Yeah, I'm throwing those in. He said, take a breather instead of saying that, and I'm trying, Chris. Okay, it's not as easy. So the guys in Vinyl Hero, they played the Barn Burner with you. I've played a show with Vinyl Hero. I played with them once in Montreal. Um, at the Vault, it was like a bar that was kind of like a bank, used to be a bank or something.
Right.
So that's where I played with them. And Ray Howard's a really cool guy. So that's another guy. And finally, the damn truth plays a big role in your career.
Yeah.
And I have connections with the damn truth as well. So I don't know, back in 2012,
The Canadian music scene, we're all 6 degrees of separation, right?
right? It's so true. 2012, I was playing at Zaphod's here in Ottawa. As the Ginger Fox, and I was given this great opportunity to open for this band who was at the time on Buena Vista Records, I think. And they're like, "You're gonna love it. You're gonna love these guys. They're up and coming. They're hot. They're classic rock. You're gonna love this, Warren." And I was so embarrassed because I only was able to bring out like 20, 25 people to that show, and they needed me to bring out more at that time. because it was a long time ago. And thankfully, last year I got to open for them with Taming Sorry, and way better, way better. We packed the Brass Monkey and had a fantastic experience. And yeah, I love those guys. I love their sound. I told Lee Baum at the show, I'm like, you're Janis Joplin, and I'm trying to be the Bob. I'm trying to be the Joe Cocker to your Janis Joplin, and
Right.
she thought that was great. But they're such pros. That's what I
Oh yeah.
really enjoy about watching their prep for the show. I
It
love
was a long
watching.
road for them. It wasn't overnight for these guys. They worked
That's
every day for decades. So.
That's what I try and tell people. I'm like, I saw these guys a long time ago and they were really good. There was nothing wrong with the talent when I saw them all those years ago. It's perseverance and not giving up, not stopping for sure played a big role.
That's one of the hardest parts about playing original music is that it's not you're not going to be on a high every day in terms of gaining success. It's sometimes life doesn't award you the time and the energy that you need to pour into this thing to get yourself to another level because the industry is all on in today's market, it's all on the artists. We don't have artist development. We don't have labels that really care about us. It's you're out there and you got to be now. You're not just a songwriter or a musician. Now you're like a marketer and an artist. You have to create all your album art. It's crazy. Like there's every corner of it is all one person now. So it can be a little overwhelming and exhausting at times. But the way I look at it is just like anything else in life. You already know what's going to happen if you quit. You're not going to get it. Like, right? This is a definite answer right there. So, how many musicians have you met and you're like, oh man, what if I just stayed with it? But you didn't. But you didn't. So that your answer is cut and clear. When you quit, that's it. There's no what if anymore. You've already sealed that what if.
It's
So
hilarious. It's hilarious that you say that because it immediately shocked me back to a memory where I'm outside of the Bronson Center here in Ottawa after opening for JJ Wild, and there's these guys who come up to me and they're in their late 50s or whatever, maybe early 60s, and one of them is like, I was in a band and I was this and I was good and I could have been the greatest of
those
all
guys
time.
always sound like the was it the uncle in
Yes,
Napoleon
yes, from
Dynamite?
Napoleon Dynamite.
Yeah,
Yes. I could have, if the coach had
I
just
could
put
have been,
me in
man. I had the greatest
one more
lick.
time.
It's like,
Yes, man. And it brought me back there immediately to standing
yeah,
outside the venue and those. And I know exactly the type of dude you're talking about because
yeah.
there are guys who come up, they just love the rock music and they just want to support you. And then there are guys who are like reliving their glory days. And
This is
it's
one
both good.
thing that I loved about being back when I was a bass player. Like I was in a band with Scott in the '90s called the Capones, and Scott was a guitar player and I was a bass player. And I didn't envy him at all because he would get those guys talking shop with him. All, oh man, I used to have an Ibanez, whatever, a copy of a Les Paul, and they talk like it was the greatest thing ever. And I'm just like, oh, Christ. Nobody wants to know what a bass player ever had, right? So it's just like it was perfect.
Oh, man. It's
Now I get hounded for everything. It's horrible.
reading up on your site about what your sound was because I actually hadn't listened to you guys a whole lot, but I listened a lot today. And what I was reading was 70s classic rock, 90s power pop hooks. And when I read that, I got very excited because I immediately thought of Cheap Trick. And then I read down and it said Cheap Trick, Thin Lizzy, Clash, Green Day. And I was very intrigued by that combination because I was like, Green Day? How does Green Day fit with Cheap Trick? And then I listened to your songs and I immediately heard it. You can immediately hear the harmonies. You can hear the way you're in the chorus that you're bringing that out the same as Cheap Trick, and yet you had some chants like the Green Day coming through.
Right.
Tonally, I got the guitar tones from Thin Lizzy and Clash that you're talking about. There was a lot of cool similar, like sometimes you read people's descriptions of their music and then you listen to the music and you're like,
No.
no, I did not. I'm sorry, I
Yeah.
did not hear the Beatles. I didn't hear Led Zeppelin. I didn't hear that. Sorry, but when I
Right.
listened to yours, I was like, okay, that's a really good description, and I can really hear those influences in a cool way.
Well, I grew up on all the eras of music, and there was always something I took away from each era. So yeah, I, I remember like when Tom from the Damn Truth, the whole reason for this whole thing was many years ago, like around 2007, I stopped playing original music. I toured in a band in the '90s called Pushing of Daisies, and then there was the Capones, and we were like, I don't want to get into that sounding like that guy from Napoleon Dynamite, but we were close if we just kept at it. But things get discouraging and things happen, and guys quit in the band, and you kind of get fed up of it. So around that time, I just kind of said, "Oh, screw it, man! I want to be a tattoo artist." And I didn't. It didn't mean I wanted to stop music. I just wanted to be a tattoo artist until I figured out what I want to do next. And I didn't know if I wanted to play guitar or bass or drums. I didn't know what kind of music I wanted to do. So I just started playing pubs, hosting open mics and playing some solo gigs. And keep in mind, I wasn't really a guitar player at this point. I knew my chords, but I wouldn't say I get on stage and I am a guitar player. I was just a bass player or a drummer that played guitar. But I guess I being in cover bands, on the side throughout all this time, I learned a lot of songs from a lot of people, and it just came naturally to me to learn more. So I just kind of exploded. I was doing, to this day, I'm still doing 300 shows a year for the last 12 to 15 years or
Whoa.
something like that. Almost every single day I've got a gig. This is like my rare day off. After this, I'm like on another 10-day stretch or something like that. So,
Amazing.
but yeah,
Congratulations.
so leading up to Tom, um, I did this thing, and then around the time of Tesla, I was playing with this band Playhouse. They'd asked me. They were like an old band from the late '80s, early '90s that were in Montreal. That were getting a lot of notoriety back then for what they were, and they missed it. Like there's those guys that talk about what could have been, and they don't do anything. Well, these guys said, well, let's put the band back together and at least have fun and see where it takes us. And that's when we got all those opening gigs for the bands I mentioned earlier. But my frustration with them was like I could see like they were talking like they were serious, but they weren't doing serious things. I'm just like saying something and not doing it. It starts to irritate me. Either
Me
you're all in or you're
too.
not.
Gosh, yes.
And so I said, well, this is not my band. I'm just a drummer playing for these guys. It's their song. I have no contribution whatsoever, and I was starting to get a little frustrated with it. So um, doing 6 shows a year and never really touring. I was like, it's a lot. Rehearsing every single Sunday to play 6 gigs a year was just stupid to me. So then I got a call from Scott, who was in the Peelers with Daphne. Ended up joining us from Red Fox and that. It's an Irish punk band, and they were on Stomp Records. Talk about the Planet Smashers. They run Stomp
Yeah.
Records, and so I was the touring guitar player at first. We went. That was our first experience with Jasper was with the Peelers, and then. But the thing about the Peelers was also it's not my gig. I would see that they were doing other things really good, but missing out the other part. So like with Playhouse, they got on a label and they got a few podcasts, which is always amazing, but they wouldn't really shoot for more press. They wouldn't try and get any kind of playlisting or anything like that at all. No radio. They weren't attempting anything. So it's like, well, this is you're doing all these rehearsals, but you're not really aiming at it. What's the purpose here? And then I would see appealers who were serious about touring. It's like, oh man, these guys are actually they're touring the country, but there's no promo behind it. I'm like, man, if only somebody would be taking care of that corner. And then when the pandemic hit, I was trying to find something to do. And the first year, I was doing for 9 months. I did landscaping, and then around the fall, November, the leaves start. You're just doing the cleanups. You're not really doing any more cutting grass. And so that job was coming to an end, and my friend Fern, who runs a backline company, which is where I get a lot of my backline gigs from, he's the guy who got me the Skinner and Foreigner and all that thing. He's like, I got to relocate my business, and I found the location. It's one big warehouse, and I need to make 9 rehearsal rooms within that one big room, plus a bathroom. So I said, well, I don't know when this pandemic's going to end. It's not looking good. So this was in November of 2020, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
And so I did that for the next year. I just me and him alone just built this room, and the Damn Truth happened to have one of the rooms. And I've known Tom and Leela for I met them in 2004 when they first got to Canada, And so we started talking. I never spent much time with Tom. I won't like we always nice in passing and everything like that. He asked me to join his band in 2004, but I was still in the Capones at the time.
Mm-hmm.
So as we're, every day he'd come in and we talk more and more because we're both bored to death. I'm on the ladder and we're just talking about music and I'm putting up drywall and he's doing his thing, but we're going back and forth all day long. He goes, man, why don't you record anymore? Why don't you do original music? Why don't you do original music? I know you're in original bands, but why aren't you doing it? I said, yeah. I told him everything I basically just told you, but he's look, man, we both got too much time on our hands right now. What if I recorded 4 songs for you for free? I'm like, dude, I haven't written a song in ages. And I said, well, but I did have a lot of material that I never really put out. I'm like, what can I do with that stuff? Which is where, if it sounds retro, if you listen to those 2 songs on Spotify or YouTube, they sound retro because they are. But I tried to bring them up to speed and bring in, like, when I wrote them, Green Day was probably the biggest band at the time. It was around the time of American Idiot and all that. Some of those songs are like 2000, 2005.
That's crazy. It doesn't feel that long ago. So some of those songs,
Right.
they feel eternal. The Jesus of Suburbia and that
Oh,
stuff.
that album is untouchable. It's
It's like
untouchable.
some of that stuff's so good. Oh man.
It's so good. But I was like, okay, well, these songs are good, but they sound too late 90s, early 2000s. What can I do to them to bring in my initial influences, which were Cheap Trick and Thin Lizzy? I like the harmonizing guitar solos and very melodic. And there's a song I have, 45, that initially sounded more like Rancid, had organ in it, more aggressive guitars. It was way more up tempo. And I said, man, what if I modernized it by taking it way down in beats per minute and turning it into Runaway Train meets Hard Luck Woman from Kiss? And so we would just completely strip the songs apart and rebuild them. I changed the melodies were all the same, but I added guitar solos in them because back in 2004, guitar solos weren't really a big thing. Back then it was all melodic, octave leads or whatever. So let's throw in some classic rock there. Let's make it a melting pot because I don't want to be Greta Van Fleet or one of those bands that just sound exactly like another band. I like when you pick your favorite parts of everything you love and make it your own. That's the greatest form of flattery. So if you can't pinpoint all like one straight influence and call me like a plagiarist, then I think my message is getting across.
Absolutely. The more influences you show, the better, I think, and the more musicality you have, if you can
Well,
adapt.
it leaves your doors open later on. If you want to be the Ramones or Motorhead, that's great too. But if you're one of those guys who feels like maybe I want to experiment later on, maybe I have more influences than just those. Maybe I can explore those and it'll still sound true.
Yeah.
Then you won't sound fraudulent.
Yeah, I kind of used to worry about that. I mean, when we first went to the producer and got the whole talk about this is years and years ago now, but when we first got the talk about, well, what does Warren's voice suit? Like, where is it going to fit? Because this alternative stuff you're doing, it doesn't suit that. But he did hear where it would suit, where the voice would lend itself. And some vocalists are able to create characters within their voice, right? And it's not even really their voice, which is one of the most clever things. I mean, when you talk about those people, we're talking about Michael Jacksons, we're talking about like the elites, we're talking about the Axl Roses,
Yeah,
people who were really able to create characters within themselves.
right.
And unless you're able to do that, I find you really got to find your genre, find what your strong suits are, and try and hit home runs as best you can. However, you sound like a very capable artist. Like I said in the beginning, I can't play all these different instruments,
Right.
and so I'm a little more limited in what I can do. You have a kitty? How old is she or he?
I don't know. She's a rescue, but she's just so clingy. She loves me. She won't leave me alone.
Aw, my kitty's over on the couch right now, so that's awesome. Yeah. So yeah, I'm kind of amazed by people like you who can do the Prince thing or the Jimi Hendrix thing or whatever, where
Yeah.
you're able to just like write it and figure it out yourselves like that, and kind of even do a producer's role as well. I really do think musicians like yourself, Steve, are are not that frequent. You know, like your brand of what you're able to do, it's rare, and that's why Cannon, for example, Cannon, the massive music fan, he when he talks about you to me, he's like, he's incredible. He's an incredible guitar player,
Yeah,
incredible
I saw him
songwriter.
definitely overhyping me to you. Will sent me a clip where he's like, he plays so fast. I'm like, that's total bullshit. Like, I am one of the sloppiest slow guitar player. I'm like Ace Frehley and meets Joe Perry. That's I,
Yeah, yeah,
I'm flattered by his thing, but it's like I feel like I'm going to be the Phantom Menace if he hypes me up too much more. I'm just going to be a big letdown.
yeah. I hear you. I feel the same way when he talks about me to people. I feel the exact same way, and it's like, yeah, keep building that pressure up, Cannon.
Yeah, exactly. Tell people I suck, and then the underwhelming factor will kick in when they see me. Like, no, it's not as bad as you said.
Yeah, but I was so excited when I saw that you were into these hooks, when you were into the hooky, because I am into the hooky as well. And now I'm in a little bit different. Of course, our styles are different. I'm more of our band's a little more southern rock, a little more Black Crows,
Oh, really
um,
cool. Very cool.
Rival
You know, I
Sons.
play in the Blushing Brides, right?
Oh,
I'm the drummer
very
for the
cool.
Brides, and the learning that Stone stuff with the open G tunings. I love it.
Yeah, that stuff's fun.
I'm a big Black Crowes fan too. So, yeah.
Yeah, you're in a lot of. How many bands are you in right now?
I mean, one original band, mine,
Yep.
but I quit all the other original bands so I can put all my focus into this. But my day job is playing covers. So if a band hires me to do, like I just did a gig in Gaspé where I was playing bass for a one tribute band that was two tribute bands. So like they travel as one band, but they do one full gig of Bon Jovi and then they do another full gig of Guns N' Roses, and they add a guitar player for the Guns N' Roses show. So he just sits around and waits while we do the Bon Jovi thing. So I'm like I'll fill in. I just did drums at the casino here with a Chili Peppers tribute, and I've done stuff with an ABBA tribute, and I'm in Two Stones tribute. I'm a drummer in the Brides, and I'm a guitar player in Forever Stones. So yeah, it really is gig to gig. It's not necessarily like I have all those gigs pre-booked for the year. It's just like, hey, are you available for this date? Can you open that in your calendar? Because my band, we have a hard time with scheduling because Phil plays in a band called Tony Russ and the Mud Horses. And throughout the summer, he was booking a certain amount of thing. And Will was gone to Nashville for a month, so we were kind of locked out of that. And Scott's got a handful of other things he does where so trying to find that little middle ground where I can, okay, I'm booking something, open this block of time. We got August. We're going to Halifax and PEI in late August, but it's hard to squeeze in those full tours. I want to go across Canada again, but it's a little
You're
tough. You
naming
need
off you're naming off all these bands that I want to play with, that I want my band to play with. I want to play a show with you guys, Steve Creep and the Wild Cards. I want to play with the Blushing Brides, and who was the other band you just mentioned as well? Gosh,
well, it's just a tribute band, whatever.
but
Playing with tribute bands is not the same as playing with other original bands. But
it's true. It's true. So your originals, how do you go about writing? Is it all you, or do you now include the members of the? Do you
going
include the
forward,
Wild?
I don't know. I haven't thought about going forward, but like I have enough material to do probably two albums just out of the old ideas, and probably more if I strip parts and started gluing two songs together. But the way I wrote all the songs that you've heard so far, there's only two released so far. I'm not really releasing an EP or an album in one shot until I do like say 4 or 5 singles. And really trying to work hard on each single because for me, like you were just saying about the hooks, I don't want people just to really be a fan of my brand. I want them to like the song, and I'm an old school mentality of like push the song until it can't be pushed anymore. Because when people see, oh, you're the band that does that song, you're not the band that looks like. I don't want to be the band that looks like, or I like the band, but I don't know any of their songs. I want people to like the songs specifically. So I approach it a little differently than a lot of modern bands that release a song every like month or two or whatever. But I push them a little harder, maybe 4 months. But my approach is like you said, the hooks. If I'm on my bike or I'm in a bath or whatever it is, and a melody pops in my head, I take my phone out and I hum it in my video section, and I go back to it later. Or if it's good enough, it just stays in my head. And when I get home, I start noodling on a guitar, trying to find a melody for it, and I start, okay, let's make this song, to the point. My songs have to be concise. I have one song that's 5 minutes long only because we slowed the BPMs, what I was telling you about, and it's the only way I could tell the full story, and I didn't want to shave anything out. To me, it was a perfect arrangement. But the other songs, yeah, I don't like much past 3.5 minutes. I don't have the attention span to listen to something, let alone write something. So don't bore
Very
us. Get to the
similar.
chorus.
Very similar thinking to myself when it comes to choruses and catchiness. I'm really interested to ask you because you are such an experienced musician. I want to know what your thoughts are on the promotion and the release of the song. Is that a big deal to you anymore? Because for me, it was a very big learning curve, and I think it's maybe the biggest learning curve for a musician once they start figuring out that they're gonna record. Um, it's a lot of it is the release. A lot of it I found is the marketing.
Oh,
What
more on that
right,
side than
right,
just recording.
the hype, and how you get the hype, how you keep the hype.
Yeah.
Um, Yeah. So did you like we've invested a lot of money in the past. We really can't continue as a band to do what we did in the first 2 or 3 years. I'm
Yeah, but
glad
if
we
you
did
put the
it.
money in the beginning, the back end will pay off because now you've got a reputation.
Yeah. Yeah.
You're building your fall. I'm still in the building phase, so the first couple of years, you're just trying to get people on board with your thing and familiar with your band and sound and growing the fans. But once you get the fans, like it's just like growing your social account, like your personal social account. If you've got 300 friends on your Facebook or Instagram, you're only going to have about 5 likes per photo. If you got 1,000 or 3,000, you're going to have, obviously the likes are going to grow along with that. So when you pump, like, let's say for me, putting out bottles and cans, because I put so much money and effort into Wine Me Up, I'm getting followers. Just it's kind of snowballing now. I can see it already swelling a little bit. So it's tough because it's all my money. It's the band is just, I try to pay them for every gig that I do, so it's financially draining to me because I'm
Yes.
the one who pays for the gas. I'm the one who pays for the hotels. I'm the one who pays for the merchandise. I'm the one who pays for the promo. Everything is me. I've sacrificed guitars to do this and everything. And it's some days it's like, okay, how many tribute bands am I going to play in to finance the next stretch?
I feel your pain. I've been lucky enough that I've been splitting it with my band for the last however many years. The only thing about that is like sometimes it sucks when you're not aligned, when the band is not all on rowing at the same time, and
Yeah.
somebody goes, "Oh, well, I got to take my paddle out. I can't put this 2 G's down or whatever it is. I can't afford to do this right now. I just can't." And all of a sudden, you're backlogged. Like, okay, well, now this isn't happening when this is supposed to happen, and this and so sometimes I think, like, I wish that I could do what you're doing. Like, I wish I could afford to pay everyone in my band and
I
take
wish I could
more.
afford to pay everybody in my band too.
See, like that's my thing. It's like, gosh, it's so difficult. And I totally understand what you're saying about how you're getting it to build and you're feeling the build with the song. It's a great feeling. And when you're able to like play live as much as you're playing, I think that's probably a key to promoting, maybe.
It is. I mean, like, I see bands like in the case of, I'll use examples of things I've been through personally. With Playhouse, we didn't play a lot, but they hyped every show that they could a lot. Like they really pushed every show to their potential fan base as much as they could. But they weren't doing anything outside of that to grow. So it's like there's so many like facets of promo pushing your shows. I find with us, whenever we play shows, the next day I've got a few extra followers on Instagram. I'm noticing it's a game of inches. We're
Yes.
gaining, we're gaining traction, but it's a slow grind. We really, if you want to leap, I don't know. You guys got quite a bit of followers. You look like you're doing well. How many years have you been around?
We started in 2017. We released our first album 2019.
Okay, so 5 years of the album, that's pretty good. Like your
Second
numbers are quite
album.
good.
Thanks, man. Well, I really went at it hard. Like, I got our Twitter followers up to like 4,000 and some, and then I got us locked out. So by accident, I can't get back in. So yeah. But yeah, I work hard at it. The band worked hard at it. Kind of take the foot off the pedal on that a little bit right now, but we'll talk about more of that off the air. Uh, you know how it is with the band. I like hearing that it's not only difficult for me. It's good to hear that it's a struggle for you as well in some aspects. But your advice about not stopping and not giving up because it's over when you do, I think is the
Yeah.
best advice.
Well,
Uh,
for me, it's too late to turn back now because I would be failing on my promise to myself when I decide to get into this. I'm going to go all in, or I'm not going to go at all, right? And I already know what's going to happen. I'm going to go back to playing Wonderwall and never have any adventures playing original music again. And some of my best stories come from playing these shows. I love my band. I love everybody in the band, and I love playing live with them. And we all have a great time. There's no fights in our band. We all get along so good. So I just want to see more of that if I can, even if it costs me financially. Because not that I hate playing pubs, I'm blessed to be doing it for a living, but it's a grind. It's a slow grind too. And I already know that there's a glass ceiling there. Like I'm never going to grow past playing the pubs 6 nights a week. So I take the tribute bands because A, they pay a bit more, and B, they're adventurous and challenging musically to me because sometimes I'm learning material that, like ABBA, is not something that I'm natural to. So I like the growth as a musician, and you learn every time you play with one of these bands how each musician works and how they approach learning and what the music you're covering, what to take away from it that you can use for yourself. Like as far as melody, it doesn't matter if you're in Motorhead or ABBA. There's good songs, right? So
Absolutely.
you'll find inspiration somewhere in there. So I like, for that reason, I like doing it. But I don't want to go back to like saying, well, I'm going to play, covers in pubs, and if I want to play originals, I'll back up another band that's half-assing it. I just don't want to do that again. I already been there. I know the frustration of it. So I'd rather just, I got something good going on. I'm in a band with everybody I like. That, first of all, is rare.
Oh, it's huge. That's huge.
It's a big thing, and if
Yeah,
I can maintain that happiness that we all have and gain success through it, then that's the goal. And there's a light at the tunnel now. I've got something now. I just got to take it from here to there and from there to there. So I know it's only been a year and a half since we released the beginning. Well, the band we started in March of 2023, so it's been a
Mm-hmm.
year and a few months, and
Mm-hmm.
we only put out two singles. We started in November with the singles, so we were just doing a few opening gigs. We're still doing opening gigs because I'm just trying to gain new fans. I'm trying to play with different bands, network, because I'm relearning who's on the scene now and all that. So it's like I spent years not really dealing with original music. So it wasn't really on me to know the original bands. So now I have to re-educate myself on who's on the scene now. Everybody's younger and changed. All the guys my age are, they're gone. So I'm the old guy on the block, and now I got to show. I got to show that I still have it for one, just to myself. I don't feel like I'm getting old, but reality is reality.
I every day I think as rockers, I think we think about it. I do,
Yeah.
for no good reason. There's nothing we
Well,
can do about it, you know.
Well, look, if you're Mick Jagger and you're already established, there's no need to think about it. But like guys like us who are not stars, who are not like living day to day, paying our rent through our album sales, we think about starting to become irrelevant before we achieve anything. And I just want to do it before I go fully bald.
Cheers to that. I'm definitely, yeah, man. My hair was a lot thicker a couple of years ago. There's no doubt about it. There's no doubt.
Well,
Uh,
get a few shitty jobs and you'll lose it a lot faster.
yeah. Whenever you were in the bands that you were mentioning previous, Playhouse, the Capones, there was another one.
Pushing up daisies, peelers.
Yeah. So when you were in these bands that was touring, when was the last tour that you did?
Well, with the peelers was just what are we now? What month are we now? We're still in July.
July. Yeah, almost over.
I think I think we did a tour in the spring. And that was our last tour, or the fall. I can't remember anymore. My life is going so fast, I can't even tell you what I did last month. It's crazy. People are like, yeah, well, you just did that thing at that show. I'm like, dude, if it was 5 shows ago, it feels like a year ago to me. So I can't. The past is nothing but dust. I'm just full speed ahead, just moving forward. So I can't remember what month it was, but it was in recent months where I played with the Peelers.
Do you have to worry about booking those shows at all? Touring is
Not
a daunting thing to
my
book
shows.
for
I do.
bands. Yeah.
I book my shows, but not theirs. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, touring is a daunting thing, you know. It's today I find it's very expensive and there's very little room for error.
Yeah, that's
You
true.
really got to know what you're doing. So, kudos that you're still in bands finding ways to do that successfully. I mean, I think that's another victory that will help you progress forward. Um, for sure. And I've got to finish up today's chat. Let's have a little fun. We were talking before on Facebook a couple weeks ago, and you mentioned that you at times have played for and met Montreal Canadiens players um,
Yeah.
at different bars. And you said maybe you had a story or two about that. I'd love to hear one or two.
Are you a hockey fan?
I'm a huge hockey fan. Born since I was about 5 or 6, I couldn't get enough of it. You know.
Are the Sens your team?
Yeah, but my first experience was watching the Leafs play against Gretzky in the
Oh,
playoffs, and that's my first memories watching and getting like really nervous because everyone around me was very nervous and just
there we go.
couldn't breathe. They were like, "Ah, it's Gretzky! Oh my
It's
god!"
crazy how the fans are with that stuff too, eh? Like,
And
I
I
mean,
do remember
you feel like you're on the team, so you're holding your breath in,
absolutely.
you know,
I
when
also
you're fully
remember
invested in it emotionally. Yeah, yeah.
Patrick
Um,
Waugh hoisting the cup. And I remember Patrick Waugh getting scored on 9 times or whatever. I was watching the
oh
TV as a
yeah.
little kid, and I remember watching it going, he doesn't get scored on that many times. What's going on? This is so weird. And that
Some
was
guys have bad days, you know. Some
yeah,
guys
man.
have.
Yeah.
But yeah, I probably my most related story was my little brother is he's a pro hockey player in Europe. He plays in the German league right now, and he's
Wow.
on the cusp of retirement. He's around 42 years old, so he's pretty much going to quit any day now. But in his younger years, he was a prospect for the Canadians, and he was a roommate with Carey Price. And I remember I played a party once with Scott, and it was on the day that the Habs got eliminated from the conference final with Philadelphia in 2010,
Okay.
and there were 13 Habs flew from Philadelphia to Montreal and came to the bar by about 1 a.m. and we partied till about 7, and that was possibly the drunkest I've ever been. The rule was no cameras like allowed, and like no taking videos or film of what's going. Not that anybody was doing drugs or anything. It's just that it's bad for the team if people see them drinking and stuff. So, but it was the end of their season, so they're just letting off some steam. You know, they deserve it. So, I remember that night. Subban was with us, and there were some funny. Are you a South Park fan?
I love it. I love it.
You ever see the episode where they put together a band and they have their black friend and they're like,
Oh
yeah,
yeah, Token, you can play the bass. And then
you can
Token's
play the
like,
bass. You can
I
play,
can't
yeah.
play the bass, but he
And
can.
he's like, damn it, you're right. So, me in my drunken state, I just think what I'm about to say makes sense in my head. But if you don't know the reference, I just sound like a complete racist. So Subban he's sitting there, and my friend lent me a bass to play the show. He's like, oh, he's a black man, and he's like, he's a big Subban fan. He's like, oh, one's representing my hood, you know? He goes, can you get Subban to sign it? I'm like, absolutely. So I go to Subban. I'm like, my friend's a big fan of yours. Would you mind signing his bass? He goes, yeah, I used to play bass. I'm like, of course you do. You're black.
What did he say?
He was stunned. I don't know if he knew the reference, but he was just like, he just stopped. And Hal Gill was there, and a few of the rookies, and they're crying, laughing because it just sounded so much worse than it was meant to be.
See, that's the problem. We all love South Park, but as soon as we quote Cartman, we get ourselves in huge problems. Yeah, like, he says the funniest stuff, but also the stuff that's going to get you in trouble. There's
Oh
no,
man,
you know.
Scott Gomez was singing with us all night, and he wasn't really. He was very happy to be doing it. He's like, oh, I've always wanted to sing with a band, and he wasn't the greatest singer, but he was having a time of his life. And who cares? It was a closed party, right? Some girl sitting facing the stage, and she's like, don't quit your day job. And he starts sulking. I'm like, dude, with your salary, I would let insults like that bounce right off me, man. Guy's making
Yeah,
$8 million
come
a year, and he's like,
on.
oh, steering his feelings. I'm like, Christ. Guy makes $8 million a year and scores 8 goals.
Yeah, you're talking about somebody who lifted the Stanley Cup in his prime multiple times
Right.
and got paid well during his prime, and
And all these other millionaires in the room he was the life of the party. He was behind the bar pouring drinks. Everybody loved him. He was the one who paid for the whole party because he was the highest paid player. So he
okay.
took care of the whole team.
Yeah, I
And,
was just about to say, like, I hope you
yeah,
didn't have to pay for any of your beer that night. That would,
right? And
yeah.
so, and then Carey Price comes walking in, and this is when went through rehab, and we're all really drunk. I'm very drunk at this point, and I'm wearing my Halak stop sign T-shirt. And I stagger over to Carey, and I know he's my brother's ex-roommate, and so I know he's got stories about my brother. And I'm like, "You Carey," like all wasted. And he's looking at me. He's like, first of all, I'm a belligerent drunk, so he's already off put. Then he sees my shirt. He's like, I can just see it in his eyes, you know. I was like, "You're my brother's roommate, Kevin LaValle," and he's like, he lightened up right there, and he started telling me funny stories about how my brother's borrowed a pair of his shoes without telling him, and he went on a date or something, and he had to leave the house. He's like, Christ, I need my shoes back. He had to call my father. My father, I have stories from all three of them. My father's like, yeah, I had to go meet Kevin and get the shoes and bring them back to Carey. And that was a pretty funny one. But outside of that, I became good friends with Thomas Plekanec. I still stay in touch with him. He lives in the Czech Republic now, and I still have his phone number, and now I text him on his birthday. And he calls me every time when he won the Silver Stick, that 1,000 game kind of
Hmm.
award, and he called me on his birthday, and he made me get out of bed and meet him at McKibben's and commandeer the stage and play songs for him. The other artist was like, "My God, so what am I gonna say? No."
Yeah.
It's Thomas Plekanec, right?
Yeah.
I met I met Chris Nyland a few times. He's always really nice. Yeah.
Right on. That
John
sounds very
Cooper
cool.
from the Lightning, the coach of the Lightning. I met him in an after hours bar after a Canadians game here. And we were all quite drunk at that one too. I was like, "Can I take a picture with you?" He goes, "Yeah." Well, they had just taken a big picture of them without their shirts on and everything. It's a whole bunch of his entourage. So he's putting up his tie, and I'm fixing his tie for him. And you can see in the picture, if you ever look on my Twitter or Instagram, there's a picture of me and John Cooper, and one of his eyes is slightly more closed than the other. And he holds it together pretty good, but I know that eye when I see it,
Gosh.
that Homer Simpson drunk look,
Yeah, I think it's special for us being musicians, getting to have some connection to the hockey world since we grew up loving it so much and having it there in our lives. One of my best memories will always be playing at a Sens game at the CTC Center. Just a great memory. It doesn't matter. Like, I got my first taste of like hate comments that day, when I went back to Facebook at home that night and I scrolled through, and you get a lot of love, but you also find out on the internet you at that level you get a lot of hate too. So I think it was
Yeah.
a great experience in like different ways for me in learning and growing. But I'll never forget looking down at the as the hockey team was coming out, and the Sens goalie Craig Anderson, he was a big rock and roll fan, and so I was kind of watching him to see if he'd react, and he did. He looked up at the screen and he was like, "Yeah,"
Yeah.
and I could tell. I'm like, "Yeah, he's vibing us. That's awesome. I know he's a
Yeah.
rock fan." So I remember being in the dressing room downstairs, and it was the St. Louis Blues who just won the cup, and they were out in the locker room, and they're passing the soccer ball around back and forth and having fun, and just great memories. I mean, that's what I love about music is the places it takes us and the people it
Oh
lets
yeah.
us meet.
And I love the
And
arenas too. I love going to the arenas where all those stories come from too.
I'm
Especially
so
when you're
grateful.
loud under the rafters, and you can see. what happens, by the dressing rooms and all the you see everything all set up off the side, the nets, and you find pucks. I remember when I was with Tesla, I bartered with all the stagehands. I said, I'll give you free guitar picks if you can hunt me down hockey pucks with each team's logo on it. So every arena I was in, I didn't. I think I missed one, but I got an Ottawa one, Winnipeg, Edmonton, and Calgary. But I think Montreal too. But I can't remember if I got. I think I have the Ottawa one still. I got a stack of them somewhere. I got to go through all my stuff one day.
Well, let me say thank you so much to Steve Creep of Steve Creep and the Wild Cards for coming on today on All Worn Out to talk music, hockey, all these cool things. Steve, I think you've been a fantastic guest. I hope you come on again. I hope we get to share a stage down the road as well. I think that'd be fantastic.
I would love that.
So just thank you so much for coming on. And we will see you all next time on All Worn Out. Bye-bye, everybody.
Thanks, guys.